I was blind, the one thing I would miss seeing the most?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think
I'd miss seeing the mountains.
I would miss sunny days.
I would miss seeing the beach.
The ocean.
My nephews.
Seeing my family.
Being able to see the loved ones' faces.
People's expressions when you talk to them.
I think I go hiking a lot, so I think maybe sometimes, you know, you see like beautiful sunsets or beautiful landscapes, looking out and seeing everything at once, and you could never ever touch that. So I feel like that you'd have to miss that if you couldn't see things.
How do I compare it to you guys, not knowing what you see? I can see better out of the corners of my eyes than I can like straight ahead. So I'll be looking at someone like this and they'll say, "Can you look at me?" And I say, "I am." But they're like, "No, you're looking over there." And I'm like, "Where is over there?"
It's a lot of general stuff. So like I can tell you're there, but I can't see like your facial detail.
You're walking with a white cane and now all of a sudden you feel, oh, here's a hole and it wasn't here before. And sometimes it's easy to miss it with your white cane. So you can step into a hole where they took out some paving, whatever. So it's very easy to hurt yourself in the process.
Now, have you ever played this game where you put on a blindfold and pretended you couldn't see? You probably bumped into things and got confused about which way you were going. Such an experience may have given you a glimpse into the world of a blind person and might have prompted questions like, do blind people hear better than sighted people? Do they see in their dreams? How do they choose their clothes? Is there something magical in that white stick that they use to get around? How do blind people use computers and smartphones? Well, stay tuned because today we focus on retinal blindness. We have expert guests who will help us understand different types of blindness, its causes and risk factors, and how best we can look after our eyes. We also have a famous legendary blind South African musician who will share with us his experiences on living with blindness. So sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show ahead. Interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and on Twitter at SABC Health Talk. I'm Dr. Sello Mutau, and this is Health Talk.
Sight, a precious gift we can't take for granted. Our eyes are windows to the wonders of the world. All we know and love, experience and discover, ponder and cherish. Let's peer into the workings of the eye, a unique and self-sustaining system. The reflected light of the world enters through the crystal transparency of the cornea, aqueous humor, lens, and vitreous humor to project onto the photoreceptors of the retina, whose impulses converge on the optic nerve, and then to the brain to be transfigured into imagery and imbued with meaning. Continual adjustments to the pupil and lens regulate the entry and focusing of light. In today's world, the eye's surface is constantly challenged to protect itself and adjust to changing conditions. Every blink helps our eye's natural defense system, the tear film, retain moisture and maintain visual acuity. Tears contain potent natural disinfectants to keep bacteria at bay. And the tear system washes away impurities to maintain eye health. The miraculous biology of our eyes inspires us to develop ways we can protect and maintain comfort for these remarkable structures. For all the wonders our eyes provide throughout our lives, we owe them our attention and ongoing care.
Our attention and ongoing care, indeed. So the human eye can be compared to a camera, and wait for it, that old camera that uses a film, you know, transmits light through a lens that creates an image of the environment. Now, in that camera that I described, that image is created on the film. In the eyes, that image is created on the retina, that thin layer of light-sensitive cells at the back of our eye. So let's understand a little more about this and what can go wrong, basically, with our eyes. We have a special guest, Dr. Sipati Makunyani, who's a specialist ophthalmologist. Dr. Makunyani is also head of the ophthalmology department at the Steve Biko Academic Hospital. Dr. Makunyani, welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
We've just seen that clip on, you know, normal vision, explaining, and I just explained this in my own simple way that I could. But let's just go through just what can go wrong in the eye, that which can lead to blindness in the end.
Just to backtrack a bit, I hope everyone has understood exactly what is required for one to see properly. Right. Because, you know, sight is, as it's mentioned in the video clip, sight is actually initiated in the eye when light travels from the object of regard, passes through the cornea and other structures, the lens also, to focus the light on the retina. Now, the retina is the back part of the eye, and it's made up of nerve cells. So what happens in the retina when the light strikes it, some complex reactions occur, and light impulses are now changed to nerve impulses, which are now taken from the eye, transmitted to the brain, and where further image processing occurs. Okay. So things that can go wrong can be along that path anyway. It may be, the problem may be on the cornea, where we have, one can have corneal opacities or corneal scars from different reasons, and one can also have a problem with a cataract. A cataract is actually an opacified lens, which means that the lens has lost its clarity. Then the other area, which is extremely important, is retina.
Right. Before we get to the retina, you mentioned when you're explaining, you know, obviously to make it simple enough for people to understand, that light travels. In other words, there has to be light that travels through the eye.
Yes.
People may ask, what about during darkness?
In darkness, one also needs to have some light for what happens is the pupil will dilate. There is a structure called the pupil, which regulates the amount of light that enters the eye. So in dimly lit areas, or when it's dark, the pupil dilates to allow as much light as possible into the eye to reach the retina. For one to see, one needs to have the light from the object of regard, what one is intending to look at. Okay,
so the brighter the light, the better the image.
The brighter the light, yes.
All right. So then you're saying that, I mean, anything can go wrong right from the outside throughout the process up to the brain, basically.
Up to the brain.
Now, let's just perhaps define different types of blindness. You hear about legal blindness, partial blindness, partial sighted. Just help us understand what these terms mean.
Okay. There are many ways, actually, in which one can classify blindness. The larger categories would be reversible blindness and irreversible blindness. So reversible blindness would be blindness that is amenable to medical or surgical interventions. A good example there would be cataract blindness. Then we have irreversible blindness, which is not amenable to any intervention, and that would be caused by retinal diseases such as diabetic retinopathy or glaucoma. Blindness from glaucoma is also irreversible.
Okay, we're going to come back to causes and risk factors, but perhaps let's just talk about those important conditions that can affect the eye leading to blindness.
There are quite a number, but the major ones which are the leading causes of blindness would be diabetes. We call a complication from diabetes. We call it diabetic retinopathy, and you can get glaucoma. Now, glaucoma is actually a group of diseases that are primarily caused by a high pressure inside the eye, and that would lead to damage of the nerve cells on the retina. And remember that the nerve cells form the optic nerve.
Yeah.
So there will be damage of the optic nerve.
Well, you mentioned pressure. Is it related to high blood pressure, people may ask?
Not quite. There is a certain fluid in the eye called aqueous. Now, aqueous is produced by a portion of the eye called the ciliary body. Now, the function of aqueous is really to bring nutrients to avascular parts of the eye, meaning parts of the eye that have no blood supply, like the lens and the cornea. So it brings nutrients to those parts and then flows out of the eye. Okay. So if there is any interruption of the flow of aqueous, then glaucoma will result. Okay. And there will be a high pressure inside the eye, but the area which cannot tolerate a high pressure is the retina. Yeah. And that's how we get retinal blindness.
How common is retinal blindness, especially due to these common conditions such as glaucoma and diabetes?
Diabetic retinopathy, and there another one called age-related macular degeneration, which affects the part of the retina that is responsible for central vision. So these are the common ones that would occur. There are statistics given by the World Health Organization that 26% of retinal conditions can contribute to blindness of the eye.
Okay, so, all right, okay. Well, we're going to delve a little deeper into these things, because I suppose some of the questions that people can ask is partial blindness. Is it that, are there various grades of blindness, as it were?
I would say there is what we can say some people would be visually impaired, really, with partial blindness, meaning that there is some vision that they have. They are not completely blind, meaning that they may actually even be able to read the Snellen's chart that we check visual acuity with, but only being able to read the largest letter, and in that way they would be having around 5 to 10% of vision.
But just to clarify, I mean, short-sightedness or far-sightedness is not what we're talking about. We're talking about blindness.
Yes, short-sightedness, far-sightedness are refractive errors, are focusing errors. Okay. Then there is another form of blindness.
Maybe before we talk about other forms, let's just hold it there, because we have to go for a quick commercial break. Okay. Now, please stay with us, because after the break, we now discuss challenges of living with blindness. Don't go anywhere.
What is beauty? Is it a view that's been waiting for you for centuries? A setting that gives you goosebumps when you see it for the first time? Is it a moment that stops you in your tracks and leaves you in awe? Some people spend their whole lives looking for it. When you open yourself up to it, suddenly you find yourself in a place where true beauty isn't something you'll ever see. Because when you meet South Africa, you'll reconsider what you think you know.
Statistics supplied by the Hallows Foundation revealed that the worldwide who are visually disabled. Of these, between 40 and 45 million persons are blind and by definition cannot walk about alone. Today, there are over 250,000 blind people of all ages in South Africa. They are usually in need of vocational and social support. Visual impairment can have undesirable consequences for general health and well-being. In places where visual impairment people spend a lot of time, they usually move around by memory. On most familiar routes, most people who are visually impaired use wide canes for guidance and maneuvering around obstacles. Some may have guide dogs which alert them of holes, pavements, cars and so on. But they tend to struggle most when the environment is changed. Blind people are continually faced with challenges relating to access to the physical and social environment. Very few healthcare settings seem to pay attention to access needs of blind people when designing healthcare facilities. Accessing healthcare services was difficult for the proofreader at Blind SA, Mr. Abel Mkhonazi.
As a youngster, because I was at a boarding school, the clinic and everything else was there, so it wasn't difficult. But as an adult, it was really difficult. You had to get a friend or your siblings to take you to the clinic.
People with visual impairment are likely to have limited access to health information and best treatment because staff is unaware of their specific needs. Susan van Wyk, who is a Braille technician advisor at Blind SA, attests that health professionals should have a different approach when it comes to people with disabilities, irrespective of whether it is blindness or not.
Even at doctors' rooms or hospitals, many of the people don't know how to handle a blind person. It should be part of their training. That should be a basic thing, especially for the health professional people, because they know they will come across a person with a disability, irrespective of blindness or whatever the case may be. So they need to be sensitive to know, okay, as soon as I get a person, there's a different approach I need to use.
Blindness may also pose difficulties with respect to participating in activities outside of workplace, such as sports and other social events. Many of these social challenges limit a blind person's ability to meet people, and this only adds to low self-esteem. Susan encourages them to come out and be socially active.
If any person with a disability, and blindness included, just note, it doesn't mean because you are blind the world owes you something. You must bring your part and play your part to the party as well. If I just there and I don't want to go out and speak to people or try to contact them, why should they go out of their way and try to let me feel comfortable?
Ernest Foster is a blind golfer with a 30 handicap who didn't let his ability define him. Despite their disability, blind people can still participate in normal life activities and sometimes even surpass fully sighted people.
Amazing indeed. Now, some people believe that it is easier if one is born blind or becomes blind as a child, as opposed to losing vision later on in life. This notion, of course, based on the ignorance is bliss theory. In other words, how can you miss what you never heard? Now, is this myth or fact? Let's hear more about this from our special guests. First up is Leon Swart. Leon is from Blind SA, and he is a Braille proofreader. And then next to him, we've got Steve Kekana, my apologies, who is a musician and former labor law lecturer at uni. So now, before we go into our discussion, let's just remind you a little bit of who we're talking to right now. Watch this. Okay, of course, the guy in glasses that you saw now is the person that we have in our studio today, Steve Kekana. Welcome to Health Talk, Steve.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and I hope you're well.
Well as I can be. And welcome to Health Talk, Leon Suarez.
It's nice being here. Thank you for having me here.
All right, gentlemen, we're talking about blindness, and perhaps let me thank you immensely for agreeing to be part of this show, to share with us your experiences of what it is like really to live with blindness. Let me start with you, Steve. When did you get blind and how?
I became blind at the age of 5 due to glaucoma. And I'm sure the doctor, Dr. Magunyani, has explained glaucoma very well.
Right.
So from the age of 5, I lost my sight.
And Leon, when did you get blind?
I started losing my eyesight completely when I was on the age of 11. From the age of 5 up to 7, when I was going on to the normal school, they discovered that something is starting to go wrong with my eyesight.
Now, maybe let's stay with you for a while. Please just tell us what you do for a living.
I'm a Braille proofreader at Blind SA. So what we do is we take the printed copy of books and we put that into Braille. And what it's all about by doing proofreading is we need to look at the Braille layout that it corresponds with the print layout. So if the print have italics on certain words or letters, then we need to put some dots in front of those letters in the Braille or words so that a blind person can see that is italics or underline or bold. So the whole idea is for us is to keep the Braille copy of the book as close as possible to this sighted copy to make it usable for the blind people out there to read their books, which they have in Braille.
Okay. When it comes to your career, I mean, what you do you regard blindness as a disability that limits you in any way to live a fulfilling life?
Not at all. When it comes to, if I look at my marriage life, I have kids that's sighted, grandchildren also at this stage, and so I live my life as far as possible to the full. There is challenges, yes, but there's so many things these days, devices which you can use. There is, like for instance, this device in my hand, we call it a money stick. So what you do is you take this money stick and you take the money in the length and you will pull it through the money stick like this.
Yeah.
And then where it comes together, that is where your 10 Rand note length will be. And if you look on the side here, it's got like grooves in there.
Yeah.
So the first one after where it comes together will be a 20 Rand, 50 Rand. And if I slide this in, I can see according to the grooves, it's now on 50 Rand.
Oh, amazing.
So that is something that you can use in your daily life. And lastly, what I also have here is which we call liquid indicators. If I make a cup of coffee, or I pour myself a drink or whatever in a glass, and I hook this over the glass, as soon as it touches here on these 2 points, it'll make a noise like that. Then I know I'm close to the edge of the glass. And as soon as it touches the middle one, it'll make a faster sound. So then you know that you are able to do your own daily skill thing in your home or in your daily life.
Very interesting. Now, Steve, I mean, everybody knows you as the successful musician. Tell us a bit about what you're doing. We introduce you as former labor law lecturer. Just tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, Doctor, I'm an advocate. I do practice law. Right. And although my friends told me when I indicated to them that now that I'm qualified and I'm admitted as an advocate, my friends told me, but you remain a musician. And I think they were right. Yeah. So I still regard myself as a musician. Right. And I always told myself that I wanted to be a singing lawyer. So I accomplished all those things, and I find it incredibly fascinating. I want to tell you one thing. I don't think blindness is necessarily an impediment. It is just an impairment,
right,
which, if you develop or cultivate a culture of the virtue of gratitude, then you can live easily with blindness.
Right.
You got to know that you are the child of the universe, being blind, and you've got the right to be here. God has a meaning. God brought you here on earth for a reason. Therefore, you must just stand up, work hard, and establish what God wanted you to establish. The truth is, difficult as circumstances may be with people living with blindness, the end result is hard work.
Just now we spoke about when the onset of your blindness. With Leon, we said 11, and with Steve, about 5. Now, maybe let me ask both of you, do you ever remember your life as a fully sighted child?
If I can answer, I'll say yes. I can still remember colors. If you tell me my shirt is blue, as I understand it is, and believe it is, yeah, I can still picture the color. So I know what green looks like, what the stars look like, the moon looks like. So yeah, no, I can still recall all those things.
Steve?
Yes, I do remember, and I can recall. I can recall even my grandfather, my late grandfather. But now, after 5 years, from 6 years upwards, I can't remember anything because my blindness is what I call cognitive blindness. I can see you, doctor, as a figure now. But when you move away, I will not remember how you looked like.
Right.
You see. But insofar as things that I saw when I was still able to see, I remember everything. And the only thing that I must quickly confess, I'm not playing fair in the blind field because I still have little sight. So colors I do see and all this. I do play soccer to an amazement of many people. I do ride bicycles to amazement of many people.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's just come back, because this is a health talk show, and talk about challenges that blind people go through, especially with regards to access to healthcare services. Let's start with you, Leon. If any, by the way.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm spoiled because I make use of my wife that's sighted.
Right.
So, but I do understand, talking to other blind people, there are some challenges. But what I found the times that I went to state hospitals or clinics, as soon as they see or pick up that you are visually impaired, people are these days very helpful. They come up to you, they approach you, and they'll try to assist you as best to their ability. So with my experiences, I will say that so far, especially this last year when I had to go for a little hearing aid for my one ear, people were very helpful and they really assist me very well.
Steve?
I want to be very honest. The biggest challenge that people with visual impairness get is that society believes that if you are blind, you can't talk and you can't hear.
That's true.
So that limits the help that you can easily, or that can easily be given to a visually impaired people, because then they always want to have an intermediary, which is not correct, because I believe I can explain my problem better than an intermediary. That is the only problem that I say. But other than that, as I said, I don't think blindness is a problem. I told my friend yesterday that, you see, I've got a very good advantage because, you know, blind people, all women are pretty.
That's very profound, isn't it? All right, okay, all right. Well, gentlemen, unfortunately, we've run out of time in this segment. I want to thank you very much for being part of this show.
Thank you so much.
And all the best for your future.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now, what are the causes and risk factors for blindness? That and more after the break. Stay with us.
SABC News, we report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Cut! Boy! Sit!
Get behind Rugby World Cup 2015 on SABC.
Welcome back to Health Talk. Now, statistics tell us that 80% of blindness is avoidable, either through prevention or treatment. But before we can even talk about prevention and treatment, let's understand a little more about causes of blindness. Now, in our Johannesburg studio, we still have Dr. Sipati Makunyani, specialist ophthalmologist and head of ophthalmology at the Steve Biko Academic Hospital. And we're now joined from our Bloemfontein studios by Sister Angelina Coupe. Sister Coupe is manager at the Bureau for Prevention of Blindness. Sister Coupe, welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Doc.
Right. I'm sure you were watching, you know, obviously from the beginning of the program and, you know, the interesting chats we had with two blind guests here in our studio. And they both mentioned that, you know, they suffered from glaucoma. They've been blind essentially since childhood. Now, you are a nurse, an ophthalmic nurse that is involved with prevention of blindness. Before we talk about anything else, just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, thank you. Like you said, I come from the Bureau for the Prevention of Blindness, which is a division, the eye care division of the South African National Council for the Blind. And what the Bureau does, it uses the focus of the World Health Organization Vision 2020 initiative, which says 80% of the people are indigent and they don't have easy access to eye care. So we take that opportunity to go out in the rural, remote areas and help those who don't have easy access to eye care services. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we've got teams that go out to do that in the provinces. They screen the patients, refer to the next level of care, and we usually get a voluntary ophthalmologists who come in to do operations, especially for cataracts.
All right. We'll come back to you just now, Sister. But Dr. Makunyani, let's just talk a lot more about now causes and risk factors. Perhaps let's start from, you know, genetic factors. Are there any genetic risk factors for blindness?
There are a number of conditions can be transmitted genetically. As we have seen from Mr. Steve Kekana and Mr. Swart, who had blindness, who had a glaucoma from an early age. Mm-hmm. Glaucoma can be congenital in that way. However, there are genes that can transmit some of these diseases. For instance, in glaucoma and other illnesses such as retinitis pigmentosa. Right. So there are a number of conditions that have a genetic factor.
Okay. Can some of these children? Sorry. Can some of these children be born blind, for instance?
Most of them would be born sighted. For instance, in glaucoma, then they lose vision very early on in life, if intervention is not made early in life.
Are there any issues around pregnancy that may act as risk factors for blindness on the child?
Yes, there are a number of, infections, maternal infections that can lead to blindness in children. And there are actually quite a number. Rubella, for instance, if a mother suffered from rubella, then a child can be born blind.
Staying on infections, are there any other acquired infections, I mean, either in childhood or adulthood that can lead to blindness?
Yes, quite a number. That would be infections that actually affect the retina. HIV, there are many. TB, fungal infections, and there are quite a number. So those would be affecting the retina directly, and they would be damaging the retina.
Okay. Let's just cross over back to Bloemfontein and speak to Sister Cooper. Now, Sister Cooper, in your work, as obviously, a Bureau for Prevention of Blindness, when you go out there, obviously there's some other environmental hazards that can cause blindness. In your experience, what are those sort of environmental hazards that you pick up or that you tell people about?
Thank you. What we have identified as we go out is that cataract is the leading cause. And cataract can actually be caused by light, affected by direct sunlight. It can actually cause to cataract. And we also get people who develop conjunctivitis because of the environment. They develop conjunctivitis, and normally conjunctivitis is not it is not a blinding condition, but when it becomes very severe, and a membrane can develop over the eye and causes the blindness. And we can also have things like pterygium. Pterygium is when there is a growth on the eye from the side of the eye towards the cornea. So if it encroaches on the cornea, like Dr. Makunyana said that the cornea is one of the visual pathways. So when it is affected by the pterygium, then it can cause blindness. And pterygium is also affected by sunlight.
All right, let's come back to Dr. Makunyana. Dr. Sister mentions some of these infections. I mean, clearly, conjunctivitis necessarily wouldn't lead to blindness.
Yes.
Under what circumstances what would be the common complication, as it were?
Yeah. What she was referring to is children who have, for instance, an allergic conjunctivitis, what we call venal keratoconjunctivitis. These children may rub their eyes so much because their eyes are itchy, and they can develop a condition called keratoconus, meaning that as they rub their eyes, the cornea, which is the window of the eye that's supposed to be a particular thickness and supposed to be clear, changes and gets thinned out, and it becomes shaped like a cone. And by that mechanism, they can lose vision.
Let's talk about one very common condition, and that is diabetes. Just how can diabetes result in blindness?
As I've spoken initially, I'd said there is what you call reversible blindness and irreversible blindness. Now, diabetes can cause both. Reversible blindness because it can lead to cataract formation. It can also lead to what we call fluctuating vision. If diabetes is not well controlled, the lens tends to, let's say if the blood sugar is high, then the lens will imbibe sugar, and the refraction, its focusing power changes. And then an individual will experience fluctuating vision.
So the key message there is diabetes that is not properly controlled.
Yes.
And in those that are properly controlled, any possibility that there might be other risk factors for blindness?
Yes, there are risk factors. By the way, those are just reversible blindness, and then there's irreversible blindness when diabetes now affects the retina. It affects the vasculature of the retina, and that leads to irreversible blindness. But now the risk factors in diabetes would be poor control, the duration of diabetes. The longer you have the diabetes, the higher the chance of you having the diabetic retinopathy, and association with high blood pressure, especially if it is not well controlled, and again, obesity, smoking, and
these are the things that we always talk about on the show. All right, let's keep it there because we now need to go for a quick break and talk about just how it is that, or at least what it is that we can do to protect our eyes in order to prevent blindness. Please stay with us.
Media Monitor, the title says it all. Can we really afford more job losses at such a critical time in our economy? Join our panel of experts as they unpack and monitor all the leading and breaking news stories making waves in the print and social media platforms. It seems we don't have a famous son-in-law any longer. Levi, what do you say to this? An A-lister.
I'll leave this one to Levi. He's the romantic.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back to Health Talk. Now, sight is a precious gift we just cannot afford to take for granted. Our eyes, as we heard, are windows to the wonders of the world, let alone the immediate environment around us. It is therefore incumbent upon all of us to look well after our eyes to prevent blindness. So let's get some tips on how to do this from our guests. We still have in our Johannesburg studio Dr. Sipati Makunyane, specialist ophthalmologist and head of ophthalmology at the Steve Biko Academic Hospital. And in our Bloemfontein studios, we have Sister Angelina Coupe, who's manager Bureau for the Prevention of Blindness. Let's start with you, Dr. Makunyane. You know, we spoke now a little earlier about causes and risk factors. Obviously, we need to know that before we can talk about, prevention and treatment. One thing that we haven't spoken about is trauma.
Yes.
When we talk about environmental issues, just tell us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. People working, the trauma actually is one of the leading causes of blindness in our setting in South Africa. And trauma can be injuries at work, injuries at home, and therefore, as far as prevention is concerned, I would like to urge everyone who works in an environment that requires protection, eye protection, please to wear their eye protection because there are many...
You mentioned the workplace, but some people get injured at home, Yes. The gentleman who's got his own toolbox and goes around fixing stuff and driving nails into walls and so on, and suddenly something shoots and gets straight into the eye.
Yes, and this is a major problem, and it can happen to anyone. Right. But remember that as soon as one starts working with such equipment, protect your eyes. There are protective glasses that can be bought as you buy your toolbox. Then you should also buy chopping wood. Yeah. Wood can be a huge problem. It can be a problem if it jumps up and then hits your eye. We have a lot of people who have been blind from that. Fireworks during New Year's time, a lot of children get injured with the explosions of these fireworks leading to blindness. Yeah.
Let's cross over to Bloemfontein and speak to Sister Coupe again. Sister Coupe, when you go out there to communities, driving the prevention message, what sort of messages do you drive? What sort of messages do you leave people?
Thank you, Doctor. The most important thing we talk about is health promotion. We encourage them to look well after their eyes. We give a lot of health education. Actually, health education is the first thing that we do to all the people that we meet before we can do any examination. So
what do you educate people about specifically?
We educate them on the causes of blindness and injuries, being some of them both physical, penetrating or blunt trauma, and the chemical, because some get injured because of use of acids and alkaline fluids. And we also talk to them about the use of sunglasses and sun hats when they go into the sun. And we also tell them about the importance of the pregnant mothers. You know, it's important to attend antenatal clinic where if you have some STDs, they get treated, because we get babies who are born and get eye infections soon after birth because the mother had an STD. And we also, as nurses, we are encouraged to not take care of these small babies, the preterm babies, because if we do a lot of oxygen, it can actually cause blindness to the premature babies. And we also encourage that everyone, every nurse, at least does primary eye care, so that even in the clinics, they are able to help the patients who come to them, even if there is no ophthalmic trained nurse there.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Mokuyan, let's talk a little bit about ultraviolet light, ultraviolet rays, and as a risk factor for blindness, because we talk about, you know, people having to wear sunglasses and so on. Your comment on that?
Yeah. Ultraviolet light can affect, for instance, I think Mrs. Cooper did mention the fact that one can get cataracts, and then, well, it is also thought that it can contribute to the age-related macular degeneration, which is a condition that is seen quite often in the white population. But yes, ultraviolet light per se can cause some of the problems in the eyes.
Okay. So what would you recommend then in terms of exposure to the sun to people?
When one is exposed to the sun, one needs to be to use ultraviolet protective sunglasses. And those one can go to the optometrist, that they will be able to advise you on the types to use.
Hopefully affordable.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay.
All right. Now, you know, the important thing that, I mean, we spoke earlier about diabetes and hypertension. And there's often talk that if you're diabetic, you need to visit your ophthalmologist, I don't know, once, twice?
Yes.
Please tell us about that.
Yeah. In fact, also for people to understand that the eye is part of the brain, or is part of the body. Right. So there are many, apart from diabetes, there are many other conditions that can affect the eyes. Therefore, you know, as you take care of yourself generally, that contributes to eye care, to eye health. And in diabetes, if you're diagnosed with diabetes, you need to be seen by your ophthalmologist at least once a year.
At least once a year.
At least.
Oh, but at least see your doctor regularly about other stuff.
Yeah.
Dr. Makuyane, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Yeah. Thank you so much for being part of the show.
Pleasure.
And to you again, Sister Coupe in Bloemfontein, thank you very much for being part of this show.
You're welcome.
All right. Remember, folks, that 80% of blindness is avoidable. So please get your eyes tested regularly by visiting your doctor or ophthalmologist at least, you know, on a regular basis. Take practical measures to protect your eyes against harmful environmental hazards, as we discussed. By the way, quit smoking if you still are. Your vision is a great gift. Pay it the attention it deserves. Well, it's on that note that we come to the end of our show today, folks. Now, join us again next week on SABC News. A reminder to please share your views and comments via our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and follow us on Twitter at SABC Health Talk. You can watch repeat of today's show at 2 p.m. and then again on Tuesday, 5 a.m. in the morning before you jet off to work. Otherwise, if you meet any of our past shows, you can get them from the YouTube link. I'm Dr. Sello Daung. Thank you for watching, and please do take care.